Of all the movie stars in all the world, the one who's had the most bruising relationship with the press is Russell Crowe, which is a bit of an irony because his new film, State of Play, is based on the British television series and he's been cast as a newspaper reporter. It's a thriller set in the murkier corners of Washington politics and co-stars Helen Mirren and Ben Affleck. Crowe won an Oscar in 2001 for Gladiator, directed by Ridley Scott, who's joining forces with him again very soon to make a new version of Robin Hood. Well, I caught up with Russell Crowe in London, where he certainly didn't mix his words about the trade of journalism.
It's my belief from my 30 years of experience of being praised, flayed and betrayed by journalists that objectivity is a myth, and that's the perspective that I took from it. You know, ultimately, the character that I play eventually gets around to reading from his own rule book. But it's not his instinct to start with. His instinct is to create a smokescreen for his friend. You gotta go on the record. Swing the spotlight back on them. You gotta protect yourself, man.
I will go on the record. I will shout this thing from the rooftops.
I can do that.
This is set in a paper which is a bit like the Washington Post in its heyday, and yet you begin to get the world of the bloggers and Google, and it's eating away at American newspapers, Australian newspapers, British
global newspapers, yeah.
They're all disappearing.
Without being too cynical about it, if there's a crisis in serious news journalism, it's only a crisis that's been created by journalists, you know, and it's a crisis that is avertible, you know, if we stop trivialising the news and if we stop, you know, having emphasise something that we know to be a lie.
And this is, your feelings about this are presumably not unconnected by the fact that every single time your name comes up, there's a little list of adjectives or phrases or adverbs that the average hack will stick against it. Drunken,
whether it's the you know, the nightclub in the city that you went to in a newspaper that you've never visited in real life, or whether it's your obsession with knitting that has been written about over and over again, or whether it's, you know, the comments of some octogenarian former comedian that get repeated, you know, every year and a half, 2 years, whenever that person happens to be on tour and wants to sell tickets. And the editor of that newspaper knows full well what that is about, and they run it anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know, as long as it can squeeze in next to the ad on page 5 for women's lingerie.
People will watch this film and they'll look at the character that you're playing, and part of them will think, I'd like to be that kind of character. The sort of slightly out of control.
I have no problem that the man has faults, you know, because that's real life, that's truth, you know. Eventually, you know, if the acid is put on you, I would like every journalist to say, you know what, I can stay fluid, I can take truth as it comes and change my opinion. I will rewrite this story. I will redraft this story as many times as I need to for it to actually for me to achieve a level of objectivity which does deliver the information and the truth of this moment. If all journalists were like that, then we wouldn't be talking in terms of crisis.
Did you immerse yourself in the world of a newsroom, a metropolitan American newsroom, to do this?
No. No, I did this on the run. I had maybe 48 hours on the ground for preparation before I started. But I've had 30 years of experience of sitting in front of journalists.
Yeah.
And you know, I've observed a lot and I've experienced a lot, and I wanted to bring those personal experiences to this situation. We had a great guy on set from the Washington Globe who was our advisor, and obviously, as you would have seen in the movie, the art direction of this film is very, very specific, and some people refuse to believe that that was anything other than an existent newspaper that we took over, but it was in fact a set built from scratch.
It's gloriously slovenly and messy
and shambolic.
Shambolic. That's why it feels right. Yeah. You've done a huge range of different characters, going right back to Romper Stomper and Maximus and so on. Are you consciously looking for a different challenge each time? Are you thinking, yes, I haven't done this kind of person
Not
before?
consciously, but that's just my natural bent, you know. So it's highly unlikely that I will be affected by something that I'm reading if I feel I've done it before. I don't consciously think to myself, oh, I haven't played a journalist, I must play a journalist. I'm reading the script and I'm taking the story in as it comes to me, but also holistically, what is the world that this character exists in? What are the wider things being said? I mean, this particular film Lord Almighty, this is the most subversive big studio movie I've ever been involved in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the subject matter of this, you know, not just the friendship stuff that's examined, not just the ethics of journalism that examined, but it's the privatisation of war and the blurred line between politics and news reporting, and, you know, how many secret handshakes there might be involved in that. You know, these are very important things that should be on the breakfast table.
It's a smear campaign. It's exactly what these companies do to destroy people who get in their way. The true story here, the real story here, is Point Court.
The real story is the sinking of this bloody newspaper!
Are there directors that you just have to keep going back to? I'm thinking of Ridley Scott, obviously, your Oscar, but you're going to be working with him again shortly.
Yeah, I'm working with him at the moment.
Yeah.
We start shooting on Monday, you know. We are approaching the oldest fictional history story in the
Robin
history
Hood.
of English literature, yeah.
So, thinking back to Maximus and all of that, and the forest scenes in Gladiator, is this going to be the greenwood turned a bit red? Is it going to be a different take on Robin Hood?
Yeah, I think we're aiming for PG-13 though, so there won't be as many decapitations as would be Sir Ridley Scott's preference.
Yeah. Well, that's a disappointment.
Yes, a little bit.
Sure.
But at the same time, you want to tell a story like this for the widest possible audience.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that we should be, you know, taking the perspective that, you know, you should only do a movie of Robin Hood for adults.
Yeah.
That would be spoiling it.
Yeah. How important is it to you? You sort of break away from the whole Hollywood world. You go back to Australia.
Mm-hmm.
You get away from all. Just in terms of staying sane in this bizarre world you must inhabit, how important is that?
It's very important. Los Angeles is a very scary place when I first went there. It's a very hard place to pin down. There's no heart to it physically. But over time, I have a lot of great friends in Los Angeles. Very comfortable place for me to be in. It is the business town for the business that I'm in. So if I want to see a particular film or somebody's work or whatever, it's available to me.
Yeah.
So it actually, now, as a nearly 45-year-old, it's a very enjoyable place for me to be and a very comfortable place for me to be. But I don't spend time there because I think it's unhealthy to unroll your swag in the office.
Too claustrophobic?
It's just not my culture, you know? So in order for me to remain who I am, I need to spend X amount of time, you know, being abused by the Australian press. And they're a rank and rugged bunch, you know, but that's how I've grown up, and so, you know, if that's what it is, so be it.
Okay, rank and rugged. Russell Crowe, thank you very much.
Cheers, man.